Hey everybody, welcome to my Discussion 8 Week 14 Instructor Overview video, or rather my instructor response video. This is going to be my last video of the semester. I really enjoyed teaching this class for the first time, and I hope that everyone enjoyed taking it. I really hope that you guys got something out of this course. I know that I did, even though we could never really meet face-to-face, except for a couple of you who came to my office hours. Hopefully someday I can teach a class with you in person under different circumstances, because I really enjoy teaching in person, but I also think that this class was pretty productive online as well. So like I said, I really hope you got a lot out of it. But without further ado, let's talk about the Discussion 8 questions, because these are probably my favorite questions of the entire semester, mostly because they relate to themes that I look at myself in my research. So the theme of this last week that you guys had was, do we have a choice? And it's, do we have a choice, related to the environmental crisis that we're facing right now. Not really just the environmental crisis that we're facing right now in terms of climate change, but, the pandemic, other things like that as well. Do we have a choice? So let's talk about that. And I also want to point out some of the things that you guys said as well, because I thought that your discussions this week were really good. To be fair, I do think it's easier to discuss things when they're more existential questions rather than yes or no answers. So I like the questions this week more, I think, than the other weeks. But the first question that you had, of what use is the past to us today? And I think that most of the groups obviously touched on the fact that the past is very important to us today. But why is that? One of the groups said that, actually 2 or 3 of the groups, I think, said that history tends to repeat itself, so it's good to know what happened in the past so that we can be better prepared for what happens in the future. That's definitely true. Another group talked about the cultural adaptations of people in the past and how we might draw from those things to, adapt to society or adapt to environmental conditions today, and that is also true. That's actually a pretty prevalent field in archaeology, if you're interested in something like that, is environmental resilience in the face of our current ecological crisis framed archaeologically. I have friends who do that in this department. So that's definitely something pretty poignant as well. But for archaeologists, the past is also important because it provides us with, context. It tells us where as a species that we were in the past and where the trajectory that we took to get to today. It tells us about our cultural history as well, beyond, whatever we did functionally. So there's a lot of things that the past can tell us. Number 2, what are the major existential issues and challenges that face our societies? And you guys all came up with some really good ones. Of course, climate change is a hot topic. Every group mentioned that at least once, and that's pretty substantially, what this class is about. A couple other groups also mentioned the pandemic. That's definitely a hot topic issue today, because we're all facing really obvious impacts of the pandemic. Let's see here. Beyond environmental crises, there are humanitarian crises as well, issues that are more social in nature than environmental. Although I would argue that environmental issues are very social as well. But these are all problems that we face today. We face some unique problems that we didn't face in the past because of our globalized world today, like cultural homogenization, language extinction, overcapitalization, things like this. So these are all things to sort of think about when contextualizing the big problems that we face as a global society. And then, of course, I encourage you guys all to pick your own problem to look at and sort of work towards fixing that in society, if that's what you're interested in. Number 3, what are the major existential issues and challenges that face our society? Oh, wait, sorry. That's number 2. Number 3, do we share one human nature, or are cultural differences so great that our responses to the environmental dynamics will be qualitatively different? Now, I actually think that this is a really good question. And I was interested to see what you guys came up with. And most of you guys did say that you thought that human culture, or human nature rather, was universal. Pretty much every group said that all humans have the same nature, but we are just enculturated in different ways. And I think that's probably what most anthropologists would think as well. I think that's what I think too. I feel like human nature is really hard to define, even qualitatively, especially because sometimes cultures are so different from one another that it's hard to find universals. And when you think you found a universal, it's probably not even universal. So like, but there are definitely things that are pretty widespread throughout all cultures, like the incest taboo, for example. Like, of course, we have some historical examples of that being overturned, like in the royal families of Egypt. Really, the royal families in a lot of different societies, but generally, it's frowned upon to marry your close relatives. But it's not universal, like I said. So definitely keep that in mind. But then the second part of this question is also really important because if we share one human nature, but we share vastly different cultures, our environmental response is going to be different. Our responses to environmental stimuli, I mean. And because we have different cultures, most groups said that they are going to be different, and I absolutely agree with this. I think that this is one of the benefits of having so many cultures in a world where we're facing ecological crisis, is that we can draw from a pool of really diverse answers to ecological problems. And this is something, too, that's not just like we're drawing from modern cultures. This is something that's diachronic, meaning it's traveling through time. Like I said before, one of the values of the past is that we can take evidence from the past, from past people and how they interacted with their environments to be able to interact more productively ourselves with the environment. So, yeah, our responses are definitely going to be qualitatively different depending on how we're enculturated. And we also grow up in different environments to begin with. You know, some people grow up in really urban cities in the United States. Some people grow up in, I don't know, the French Alps. Like, those are two very different environments, and because they're different geographically and culturally, these people are probably going to be have different reactions to environmental stimuli, which definitely has an impact on environmental preservation. And this is something that I'm really interested in studying myself. So if you guys are also interested in looking at this, reach out, because I would love to talk to you about this and turn you towards some resources. Now finally, the last question of the discussion and the last question of the class as far as discussions go. Do we have a common human experience revealed in the past, despite our culturally different outcomes? Now, this is one that I actually think I might disagree with most groups. Because most groups said that they did think that we had a common human experience, despite our different cultural outcomes. And when I first read this question, I was like, no, like, of course we can't have a common human experience if our cultural outcomes are so different, because different human lives are lived in such different ways. Most complex societies, like we talked about, are stratified. They're hierarchical. So people who are elites are going to have different lifestyles than people who are slaves. And this is true in society today as well. People who are of the upper class live vastly different lives than people who have a difficulty making ends meet month to month. And that's just like socioeconomic status difference. Like, there's cultural difference to take into account. There's personal difference, agency, depending on what you're given when you're born. There's so many different things that go into the human experience that it's really hard to say that there is a common human experience. However, I definitely think that the argument that you guys who said that you think that there's a common human experience, there's definitely like some truth to that as well. Because all humans are equally adaptive, arguably, to problems that they're facing in society. Because humans have these really plastic brains that allows us to figure out ways to overcome problems that we might not have thought of before. We continuously draw from a pool of culture and we innovate to be able to create more. And these are all things that we've done continuously throughout the past. But ultimately they did culminate in different outcomes. And I think this is part of the reason why we have so many different cultures today, because the human brain is so plastic. I think that is the universal, that we are really good at adapting. just as an example before I sign off and let you guys go. Think about if you were in the Arctic, right? And you were stripped of all of your culture. You didn't have any clothes, you didn't have any tools, you're just naked out in the middle of the Arctic. Could you survive? Probably not. Not unless you had some sort of cultural knowledge that allowed you to maybe like hunt a seal or something and then make clothes. Like you would have to, if you had to start from scratch and you had no human culture, you probably wouldn't be able to survive. So this is the commonality. It's our ability to adapt and create culture. The culture is what's different. That's what I would say. And with that, I thank you to everybody who watched this video, everybody who got to this point. I hope that you, like I said before, really get a lot out of this class. And if it happens, I look forward to being able to teach you guys in the future. Thanks for taking this class. And as always, let me know if you have any questions. Thank you.